Every journey toward Allah's forgiveness begins with sincere repentance, known as Tawbah. No matter how far a person feels they have drifted away, the door of mercy is never closed. Human beings are naturally imperfect. They make mistakes, fall into sins, and sometimes repeat actions they deeply regret. Islam does not expect perfection from people, but it calls them to continuously return to their Creator with humility and honesty. Tawbah is not merely the act of saying words of apology. It is a deep spiritual transformation that starts in the heart and reflects in one's actions. True repentance begins when a person recognizes their mistake without making excuses. The heart feels genuine regret, not because of fear of people or consequences in this world, but because the relationship with Allah has been harmed. This feeling of remorse is powerful because it awakens the soul. Many people think repentance is only for major sins, yet even small sins accumulate and slowly distance a person from spiritual peace. When someone becomes aware of their wrongdoing and feels sadness for disobeying Allah, that emotional awareness itself is a sign that faith is alive within them. A crucial part of sincere tawbah is immediately stopping the sin. Repentance cannot exist alongside intentional continuation of wrongdoing. It requires courage to walk away from habits, environments, or influences that pull a person back into the same mistakes. Sometimes the struggle is internal, involving desires, anger, or weaknesses that feel difficult to control. Other times it involves changing friendships, routines, or daily choices. This step demonstrates sincerity because actions begin to align with the intention to change. Another essential element of repentance is making a firm intention not to return to the sin. This does not mean a person will never slip again, because human beings remain vulnerable to mistakes. What matters is the honest commitment to improve. Allah understands human weakness better than anyone, and He values effort and sincerity more than flawless consistency. Even if someone falls again after repenting, they should never feel ashamed to return once more. Repeated repentance is not hypocrisy. Abandoning repentance is the real loss. Sincere tawbah also includes turning toward Allah with humility. When a person raises their hands in dua, admits their faults, and asks for forgiveness with a broken heart, they rebuild their connection with their Creator. Moments of repentance often become the most intimate conversations between a servant and Allah. In those quiet moments, free from judgment and distraction, a believer realizes that Allah listens without rejection and forgives without humiliation. Many people delay repentance because they believe they must first become better before turning to Allah. They assume they need to fix their lives, stop all sins, or reach a higher level of faith before asking for forgiveness. In reality, repentance itself is the beginning of change. A person does not purify themselves before coming back to Allah. They come back to Allah in order to become purified. Waiting for the perfect moment is one of the greatest traps that prevents spiritual growth. Sincere repentance also transforms how a person views their past. Instead of drowning in guilt or self-hatred, a believer learns to see past sins as lessons that lead them closer to Allah. Sometimes a mistake humbles a person more than years of worship. A sinner who cries sincerely for forgiveness may develop deeper faith, compassion, and awareness than someone who never experienced struggle. Through tawbah, failures become stepping stones towards spiritual maturity. Repentance brings emotional relief and inner peace. Carrying guilt weighs heavily on the heart, creating anxiety and distance from faith. When a person sincerely repents, they release that burden and experience hope again. Allah's promise of forgiveness gives believers the courage to start over, no matter how many times they have failed before. Each act of repentance renews faith and strengthens the connection between the servant and their Lord. Consistent repentance gradually reshapes character. A person who regularly turns back to Allah becomes more mindful of their actions, more careful with their words, and more conscious of their purpose in life. Tawbah is not a single moment, but an ongoing lifestyle of self-reflection and spiritual renewal. It teaches accountability, humility, and reliance on divine mercy, allowing a believer to grow closer to Allah with every sincere return. Losing hope in Allah's mercy is one of the greatest spiritual dangers a believer can face. Many people carry heavy guilt because of their past mistakes, thinking their sins are too many or too serious to be forgiven. They begin to believe that forgiveness is meant for others who appear more righteous, more disciplined, or more consistent in worship. This mindset slowly distances a person from Allah. Not because Allah has turned away from them, but because they have convinced themselves they are no longer worthy of His mercy. Islam teaches a completely different reality. No sin is greater than Allah's mercy, and no sinner is beyond redemption as long as they are alive. Human beings often judge forgiveness based on human standards. In worldly relationships, repeated mistakes can break trust permanently, and forgiveness may come with conditions or limitations. People sometimes carry this understanding into their relationship with Allah, assuming that after too many failures, they will be rejected. Yet Allah, mercy is unlike human mercy. It does not decrease when shared, and it does not become exhausted, no matter how often a servant returns seeking forgiveness. The believer is encouraged to maintain hope even after falling into the same mistake repeatedly. Despair is not humility. It is actually a misunderstanding of Allah's nature. When a person believes their sins are too great to be forgiven, they unintentionally limit the infinite mercy of Allah. Shaytan uses this feeling strategically. After tempting a person into sin, he then whispers that forgiveness is impossible, pushing the individual deeper into guilt and spiritual paralysis. A believer must recognize this pattern and refuse to surrender to hopelessness. Hope itself becomes an act of faith because it reflects trust in Allah's compassion. Hope in Allah's mercy does not mean taking sins lightly or becoming careless about wrongdoing. Rather, it balances fear and hope in a healthy spiritual state. Fear reminds a person to avoid sin, while hope motivates them to return after falling. Without hope, repentance feels pointless. Without fear, accountability disappears. Islam teaches believers to live between these two emotions, maintaining awareness of their mistakes while trusting that Allah welcomes their return. Many of the greatest examples of forgiveness come from individuals who made serious mistakes yet transformed their lives through hope in Allah. Their past did not define their future because they refused to believe that they were permanently condemned. When a believer understands that Allah's mercy is vast, they stop identifying themselves solely by their sins instead of saying, I am a bad person, they begin to think, I am a servant who is trying to return to my Lord. This shift in perspective changes everything. It replaces shame with motivation and replaces despair with action. Hope also strengthens resilience during spiritual struggles. Everyone experiences moments of weakness, periods of distance from worship, or times when faith feels heavy. During these moments, hopelessness can cause a person to abandon prayer, remembrance, and repentance entirely. But when hope remains alive, even a struggling believer continues to knock on the door of mercy. Each prayer offered after a mistake, each whispered dua after regret becomes proof that the connection with Allah still exists. Believing in Allah's mercy allows a person to forgive themselves as well. Many people remain trapped in past regrets long after they have sincerely repented. They replay their mistakes repeatedly, punishing themselves emotionally, even when Allah has already forgiven them. True faith teaches that once repentance is sincere, a believer should move forward with confidence. Holding on to excessive guilt can prevent spiritual growth because it keeps a person focused on failure instead of transformation. Hope encourages continuous improvement. When a believer trusts in Allah's mercy, they become more willing to try again after setbacks. They pray even when they feel imperfect, give charity even when struggling spiritually, and seek knowledge even when unsure of themselves. They understand that closeness to Allah is not reserved for flawless individuals, but for those who keep returning despite their weaknesses. The awareness of Allah's mercy also shapes how believers treat others. A person who hopes for forgiveness becomes more forgiveness with people around them. They judge less harshly, show more compassion, and recognize that everyone is fighting unseen battles. Remembering how desperately they rely on Allah's mercy softens their heart and strengthens their empathy. Hope transforms worship into love rather than fear alone. Instead of worshiping only to avoid punishment, a believer begins to worship out of gratitude for endless mercy. They realize that every new day is another opportunity granted by Allah to return, improve, and seek forgiveness once more. Even after countless mistakes, the invitation to come back remains open, reminding the believer that Allah's mercy surrounds them at every moment of their life. Seeking forgiveness frequently through Istighfar is one of the simplest yet most powerful acts a believer can perform. The phrase Astaghfirullah, meaning I seek forgiveness from Allah, carries deep spiritual significance beyond its few words. It is an acknowledgement of human weakness, a recognition of dependence on Allah, and a continuous effort to purify the heart. Many people assume forgiveness is only necessary after committing major sins, but Islam teaches that istighfar should be a constant part of daily life, regardless of a person's spiritual level. Human beings commit mistakes knowingly and unknowingly throughout the day. Sometimes sins are obvious actions, while other times they exist in subtle forms such as negative thoughts, careless words, pride, impatience, or neglecting gratitude. These small spiritual stains accumulate over time and can slowly harden the heart. Regular istighfar cleanses these stains before they grow heavier. It acts like spiritual maintenance, keeping the heart alive, soft, and connected to Allah. The beauty of istighfar lies in its accessibility. It requires no specific place, no special time, and no complicated preparation. A believer can seek forgiveness while walking, driving, working, or resting. This constant remembrance transforms ordinary moments into acts of worship. When the tongue becomes accustomed to saying Astaghfirullah, the heart gradually becomes more conscious of Allah's presence. This awareness helps a person become more mindful of their actions, reducing the likelihood of falling into sin again. Frequent istighfar also strengthens humility. When a person repeatedly asks Allah for forgiveness, they acknowledge that perfection belongs only to Him. This realization protects the believer from arrogance and self-righteousness. Even individuals who perform many good deeds continue seeking forgiveness because they understand that no act of worship is ever truly perfect. Recognizing personal shortcomings keeps the soul grounded and sincere. One of the profound effects of istighfar is the peace it brings to the heart. Many people carry invisible burdens, stress, anxiety, sadness, or unexplained heaviness. Spiritual traditions teach that sins can weigh on the soul, creating emotional unrest. Seeking forgiveness releases this weight and replaces this tranquility. The act of turning back to Allah reassures the believer that they are not alone, that their mistakes do not define them, and that renewal is always possible. Istighfar also opens doors of blessings in ways that may not be immediately visible. When a believer consistently seeks forgiveness, they invite divine mercy into every aspect of life. Difficult situations begin to ease, opportunities appear unexpectedly, and the heart gains clarity in decision making. This does not mean life becomes free from challenges, but it means the believer faces those challenges with greater strength and spiritual support. Another powerful aspect of frequent istighfar is its role in self-reflection. Each time a person seeks forgiveness, they pause to evaluate their actions and intentions. This habit builds self-awareness, helping individuals recognize patterns in their behavior. Over time, they begin to notice which environments weaken their faith and which actions bring them closer to Allah. Istighfar becomes not only a request for forgiveness, but also a tool for personal growth and moral improvement. Consistency in seeking forgiveness nurtures hope and resilience. When believers fall into sin, the habit of istighfar prevents them from remaining trapped in guilt. Instead of allowing mistakes to push them away from faith, they immediately return to Allah. This quick return protects the heart from despair and keeps the spiritual connection alive. A believer who practices constant istighfar learns that failure is not final as long as repentance continues. Frequent remembrance of forgiveness also deepens gratitude. By regular asking Allah for mercy, a person becomes more aware of how much they depend on divine kindness every day. They begin to appreciate blessings that were previously overlooked: health, guidance, relationships, and opportunities for worship. Gratitude and forgiveness become intertwined, strengthening faith and increasing contentment. Over time, istighfar reshapes character. The believer becomes calmer in moments of anger, more patient during hardship, and more compassionate toward others. Seeking forgiveness reminds a person of their own imperfections, making them less judgmental and more understanding of human weakness. This transformation reflects the spiritual cleansing taking place within the heart. Making istighfar a daily habit turns life itself into a journey of continuous renewal. Every repetition becomes a step closer to Allah, a moment of spiritual cleansing, and an opportunity to start again, regardless of past mistakes. Through constant remembrance and sincere seeking of forgiveness, the believer keeps their heart alive, their faith refreshed, and their connection with Allah continuously strengthened. Performing good deeds as a means of erasing bad ones reflects one of the most hopeful principles in Islam. Allah in His mercy does not leave human beings trapped by their past mistakes. Instead, He provides countless opportunities to replace wrongdoing with acts of goodness. Every sincere good deed becomes a step toward purification, allowing believers to transform regret into positive action. This concept encourages movement forward rather than remaining stuck in guilt, reminding a person that spiritual recovery is always possible. Human beings often feel overwhelmed after committing sins, believing that their past permanently defines them. However, Islam teaches that good deeds actively wipe away the effects of sins when performed sincerely. Acts of worship such as prayer, charity, kindness, honesty, and helping others are not only rewarded but also serve as spiritual cleansing. This understanding changes how believers respond to mistakes. Instead of surrendering to despair, they are motivated to increase goodness in their lives. Prayer holds a special role among good deeds that erase sins. The 5 daily prayers create regular opportunities for renewal throughout the day. Each prayer allows a believer to stand before Allah, reconnect spiritually, and seek forgiveness repeatedly. These moments of worship interrupt daily distractions and bring the heart back to remembrance. With every sincere prayer, minor sins are forgiven and the believer is spiritually refreshed. Pray hard becomes more than an obligation. It becomes a continuous opportunity for purification. Charity is another powerful means of earning forgiveness. Giving to those in need softens the heart and reduces attachment to worldly possessions. When a believer helps someone facing hardship, they reflect Allah's mercy through their own actions. Charity does not have to be large or public. Even small acts given sincerely carry immense spiritual value. Feeding someone hungry, supporting a struggling family, or offering assistance quietly can erase sins while strengthening compassion and gratitude within the giver. Kindness toward others also serves as a form of repentance through action. Sometimes people focus only on private acts of worship while overlooking the importance of character and behavior. Smiling at someone, forgiving those who hurt us, showing patience with family, or speaking gently can all become means of forgiveness. Islam emphasizes that faith is not limited to rituals, but is reflected in how a person treats others. Good character becomes a powerful pathway toward Allah's mercy. Good deeds also reshape habits and environments that private to sin. When a person fills their time with beneficial actions, there is less room for harmful behavior. Volunteering, seeking knowledge, maintaining family ties, and engaging in remembrance of Allah gradually replace negative patterns. Over time, these positive actions strengthen discipline and spiritual awareness, making it easier to avoid returning to past mistakes. Sincerity remains essentially when performing good deeds. Actions done solely for recognition or praise lose their spiritual impact. True transformation occurs when good deeds are performed for the sake of Allah alone. Even hidden acts known only to Allah carry immense value because they reflect genuine devotion. A believer who quietly performs good deeds develops a deeper connection with Allah, knowing that divine reward does not depend on public acknowledgement. Good deeds also heal emotional wounds caused by past sins. Regret often leaves a person feeling unworthy or distant from faith. Engaging in acts of goodness restores confidence and hope. Each positive action becomes evidence that change is possible. Instead of viewing themselves as defined by mistakes, believers begin to see themselves as individuals actively striving for improvement. Consistency in good deeds matters more than occasional grand actions. Small acts performed regularly have lasting spiritual impact. A daily habit of prayer, charity, remembrance, or helping others gradually builds a strong foundation of faith. These consistent efforts accumulate over time, creating a life filled with opportunities for forgiveness. Islam encourages believers to focus on steady improvement rather than perfection. Performing good deeds also strengthens the connection between faith and everyday life. Worship extends beyond specific religious moments and becomes integrated into daily interactions. Work done honestly, responsibilities fulfilled, with sincerity and kindness shown in ordinary situations, all become acts of worship when performed with the right intention. This perspective allows believers to transform their entire lives into a path toward forgiveness. Through good deeds, Allah grants believers the chance to rewrite their spiritual story. Every act of kindness, every prayer offered sincerely, and every effort to benefit others becomes a means of cleansing the heart. The past no longer remains a burden when it is followed by sincere action and positive change. Good deeds become bridges leading from regret to hope, from weakness to strength, and from distance toward closeness with Allah. Turning to Allah during hardships is one of the most powerful ways a believer earns forgiveness. Difficulties are an unavoidable part of human life. Difficulties are an unavoidable part of human life. Every person experiences moments of loss, disappointment, fear, or uncertainty. While hardship is often viewed as punishment or misfortune, Islam teaches that trials can actually be a profound form of mercy. When faced with patience and trust in Allah, struggles become opportunities for spiritual purification and closeness to the Creator. Hardship has a unique ability to awaken the heart. During times of comfort, people may become distracted by worldly success, routines, and temporary pleasures. It is often in moments of pain that a person sincerely reflects on their life and reconnects with Allah. When plans fail, relationships break, or circumstances become overwhelming, the believer realizes their true dependence on divine support. This realization softens the heart and opens the door to sincere supplication. Patience during trials is not passive suffering, but an active form of worship. It involves controlling negative reactions, maintaining faith despite uncertainty, and trusting that Allah's wisdom exists even when outcomes are unclear. Patience does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending that pain does not exist. Rather, it means expressing struggles to Allah while refusing to lose hope in His mercy. Each moment of patience becomes spiritually valuable, earning forgiveness and elevating a believer's status. Hardships also serve as a means of cleansing sins. Just as physical illness removes toxins from the body, emotional and life challenges purify the soul. Every worry, sadness, and difficulty endured with faith removes spiritual burdens accumulated through mistakes and shortcomings. This understanding transforms how believers perceive suffering. Instead of seeing trials only as obstacles, they begin to view them as opportunities for renewal and spiritual growth. Turning to Allah during hardship strengthens the relationship between the servant and the Creator. In moments of desperation, prayers become more sincere, more focused, and more heartfelt, and more heartfelt, and more heartfelt. A believer speaks to Allah without formality, sharing fears, hopes, and pain openly. These intimate conversations build a deep sense of connection that may not develop during times of ease. Hardship strips away distractions and reminds the believer that Allah is always near, listening and responding in ways that may not immediately be understood. Trust in Allah's plan is another essential aspect of facing trials. Often, people struggle because they try to control outcomes beyond their ability. When events do not unfold according to expectations, frustration and anxiety increase. The Saints teaches believers to do their best while accepting that Allah's knowledge surpasses human understanding. What appears as loss today may become protection tomorrow. What feels like delay may actually be preparation for something better. Trust allows the believer to find peace even when answers are not visible. Gratitude during hardship also plays a powerful role in earning forgiveness. While it may seem difficult to feel thankful during struggles, recognizing hidden blessings shifts perspective. A believer may still have health, faith, supportive relationships, or opportunities for growth despite facing challenges. Expressing gratitude in difficult times reflects strong faith and humility, qualities deeply beloved by Allah. Hardships teach empathy and compassion toward others. Someone who has experienced pain becomes more understanding of people's struggles. They offer kindness more readily, judge less harshly, and support others sincerely. These compassionate actions become additional means of earning forgiveness because they reflect the mercy Allah shows to His creation. Trials also build resilience and spiritual strength. Each challenge faced with patience increases confidence in Allah's support. A believer who survives difficult moments learns that hardship does not last forever. This realization strengthens faith and reduces fear of future struggles. Instead of feeling defeated by adversity, the believer begins to see every challenge as another opportunity to grow closer to Allah. During hardship, remembrance of Allah becomes a source of comfort. Reciting prayers, making dua, and engaging in acts of worship provide emotional stability and spiritual reassurance. These practices remind the believer that difficulties have purpose and that relief ultimately comes from Allah alone. Even when circumstances remain unchanged, the heart experiences calmness through reliance on divine wisdom. Facing hardship with faith transforms suffering into spiritual elevation. Pain becomes meaningful, patience becomes rewardable, and struggles become pathways toward forgiveness. Through trust, prayer, gratitude, and perseverance, the believer turns moments of difficulty into moments of closeness with Allah, allowing trials to purify the soul and strengthen faith in ways that comfort alone never could achieve.